Right. Okay.
I can't even think now. Okay, wait. We are live, everybody. Okay, we got Dr. Sherrie. Everybody, let's do this.
Welcome to Let's Spill It. In each episode of Let's Spill It, we sit at the table with leaders who did it messy, failed, brushed it off, and began their rise. It will be fun and sometimes uncomfortable. Isn't that what life is all about? Your terrific trio will guide you through these conversations with sass, sincerity, and a little bit of what the heck just happened? Get ready for your roadmap to leadership, authenticity, and learning things you may have never dreamed you wanted to know. Together, we'll make the world a better place by collaboration and idea making. Join the stream team, Radesh, Julie Riga, and Julie Loken, as we get ready to transform our thinking and yours. Let's spill it.
Who do we have here, guys? Let's spill it. Who do we have here? And she is not only like my favorite human and kind of like my sister from another mister, my twin, but she is Dr. Sherrie Campbell. And not only is she the preeminent psychoanalyst in the whole entire universe and all of the land, but she is like giving us permission to end those toxic relationships in our life, whether it's personal, professional, or even family, which is really a taboo topic. So we have Dr. Sherrie here. We have Radesh and Julie Riga. Julie, let's kick it with your intro.
Welcome, Bravehearts, to another episode of the Sherapy podcast. If you're ready for a second opinion, the doctor is in. Join Dr. Sherrie Campbell as she weaves her unique brand of therapy, giving you permission to release poisonous people and situations from your life and heal in the aftermath. But this is not the Sherapy podcast, or is it?
Yay, Dr. Sherrie's in the house.
Welcome, Dr. Sherrie.
Thank you, you guys. So fun to be here on this little panel. I think panels are so fun.
Agreed, and we try to make it fun. So we obviously know your background a little bit, but share with us a little bit for someone that knows nothing about Dr. Sherrie.
So I'm a clinical psychologist and a social media influencer, author, do a lot of blogging, and my Facebook is huge. And my niche is toxic ties and cutting ties, specifically with family. But I've also written for Entrepreneur Magazine. I wrote for them for 6 years. I was one of their top writers, and HuffPost, and lots of other people have done some TV and things like that. So definitely, I know today our topic is toxic people in the workplace. So it's not a far stretch, because it's not like there's a tremendous amount of variance in what toxic people do to manipulate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I think with everyone that has a passion or is out there doing what they do, it stems from maybe something that triggered them to make that important in their lives. So do you have a personal connection to all of this, which is what drives you?
Yeah, I'm probably the only expert in the world who shares my own story along with me being an expert in my own field. Most of the experts don't touch that. Um, and it's understandable. It's a great risk. But I guess I search for my books to be survivor approved rather than expert approved, because I know in the journey of a toxic family, I've done so much research trying to help myself. And the research, certainly grateful for it. It taught me a lot, but it fell short in many ways because I recognized maybe I wasn't really hearing from a survivor, or the truth of a survivor hiding under an expert that was willing to go out on the edge. And I just decided to jump off and fly down and externalize it for other survivors.
Wow, that's deep and so valuable, because how many times are we more apt to listen to somebody that has truly been through what we are going through than just to hear it and not really know that they have any background?
So often, and I think that they protect themselves and that they really want to sell books. And the less you push back on the cult and culture, the more books you sell on a big level. And I think that's why the big experts don't really discuss it. And it does, in all honesty, puts me at great risk, because I'm also pushing up against my predators.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I can understand why a lot of people don't want to do that.
Truth, but that also makes you wonderfully unique in the way that you do what you do, and we're so thankful to have you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So when we go ahead.
Go, Julie, go.
Oh, well, I was just going to say that I think that transitions very nicely into our topic for today, is dealing with people in the workplace that are toxic. And in the workplace, it's a little bit harder to get rid of these people. Maybe you don't want to get rid of your job. And this is different than saying my boss is toxic. This is really about, there might be some people in your space that might be toxic.
Yeah.
Dr. Sherrie and I had a great conversation about toxic bosses, but wondering a lot about what happens when these toxic people are part of your team, or not necessarily part of your direct reporting lineup, which is, I think it's a little easier when they're not you're reporting to a person, but they're just in your space.
But also it brings to mind, because I've experienced this as well, in my career. Sometimes that one person can kind of tank your team, or or put you so far back from learning because they make it about them, and it's so selfish. What kind of suggestions, or what available avenues do we have to be able to?
Well, let's describe our problem first, right? Emotions are contagious. So if you think about a negative contagion, it just takes one vein of poison to take down a whole fleet of people. So if we define our problem, which is really the first step in understanding what's going on, because what toxic people do is they create confusion so they can mask where the problem is. They're constantly blaming somebody else. That allows them to hide under that they are the vein. They're the source of the nutrition to the negative contagion. And so when you're around this person, you're hearing a lot of hearsay, a lot of gossip. The inside sales rep didn't do this. Now this is all going to a power holder, probably being the boss. The engineers didn't do this. And there's these layers that create, for example, sales. Sometimes there's inside sales engineers, and they're externalizing it so they can get products sold or whatnot. And if you have a sales rep that no one wants to work under on the inside, but they're really good to the customer, let's say they're a top performer, but no one on inside sales or engineering wants to work under this person because they're so abusive and so selfish, because this toxic person needs to externalize results. So they're great on one end and they're getting the high numbers, but everybody underneath them is wanting to quit. They're having stomach issues. They're starting to have stress issues. They're bringing work home. They dread going to work. And so, HR becomes involved. You try, but for a long time, because you're confused, because you do want to perform well under whoever this person is, like in my example, this sales rep who's connected in the middle. So the boss is getting great feedback from the customer perhaps, but everybody underneath is suffering. But if they're getting the numbers, then the boss doesn't want to hear these people. Like, who cares? I mean, we're getting our numbers, and then money gets involved. And I think that abuse gets worse because if they're getting results, they don't really care how they got there because business isn't exactly sensitive.
Yeah, that's sales, right?
That's sales, for example. So you have to define your problem. You really do have to try and figure out where is the source. Where's the source that's causing me to feel all this upheaval, this stomach ache, this high blood pressure every time the phone rings and you see that person's name. And you initially, I think, question yourself. And so you start trying to just do what this person wants because you think, well, if I just clear the table, I give this person what they want, and you do that. But let's say the customer is not happy. The toxic person won't own it. They'll go back below them and start bullying.
Well, and I found what it is. It appears to be a never-ending cycle because if you solve in one area that you think will cease that person's search for for clarity, they'll find trouble somewhere else because that's how they operate, right?
Yeah, they're very wiggly. They're able to impress a boss. If they impress a boss, they're not going to listen to it. They'll be like, you're too sensitive. It's fucking business or whatever.
You're good.
I like the cursey words. They're sense enhancers. So did you see me? I'm like, uh-oh. So,
no, you just excited me. I like enhancing words.
Okay, good. They're sense enhancers. For all those who are offended, I apologize. So, it's so frustrating because you don't get heard. It looks like you're complaining. Then also in business, you don't want to look like a complainer. You want to be respected and you don't want to make yourself look like you're being bullied. So it takes a long time. And all that time is you trying to externalize to the toxic person what they're doing that's frustrating. They just know more and more. You're giving them more and more information on how to wound you.
Oh, and attention, because sometimes I have a few in my organization that it's really just about attention.
Well, let's look at what they want. What is their fuel? So we keep defining the problem, right? It's attention and emotional reaction. They love reactive abuse. They provoke. You react and they're like, oh my God, you're such an abuser. Or you're so out of control, and then you're confused. You're like, what? Whoa, well, what happened? And they gaslight. Right. So when boundaries are discussed in the literature, one of the major problems I have found with it is in a healthy dynamic, and that seems to be what they're all written for, at least to what I've seen, is you can set boundaries on a healthy person and have some level of measurable change in their behavior because they care about you. So you can set boundaries with healthy people for other control. You're controlling the other. I'm going to control this behavior of yours in my life. When you said this, it hurt me and I'm not going to tolerate that. A healthy person goes, oh my goodness sakes, so sorry. Didn't mean it that way. Won't happen again. I get you. I see why that hurt you. Please know I didn't intend. Boom, it's over. When you set a boundary on a toxic person, they're like, cool. I know right where to poke her. So you set the boundary thinking you're going to have some other control and they cross it like neener. Mm-hmm. So when you're setting boundaries on a toxic person, it's actually about self-control.
Wow. Okay.
You have to control your emotional reaction and any level of attention that you give them as they're stepping over your lines of tolerance. And in that case, silence is your superpower. Okay. You actually do not have to respond to anyone who's treating you with a lack of respect.
That is so simple, yet probably overlooked as an option to do.
You know why? Right? Because of pride. All of us have pride. Toxic people have nothing but pride, but we do have self-respect. We do want to stand up for ourselves. We do want to explain ourselves, believing that this other person on the other side of us may be healthy when they're not. So I'm not asking you to lose your voice. I'm asking you not to waste your voice. If you're going to use your voice, use it wisely. You know, I want to find my voice. This is a big thing in the literature. I get it. I do think you need to find your voice. And guess what? Sometimes silence is the loudest way to speak.
And
Wow.
avoiding seems easiest, to be honest, in some of these situations, and silence. But oftentimes you probably don't think that that's the right thing to do.
Or
Yeah,
it's not
because
what
we
we're
feel like
pre-programmed to do.
we're going to get told on. I asked so-and-so for a response and they didn't give it to me. It's a big tattletale ladder in corporate America. I'm going to go tattle on you. What I would do is I would be patient and let the boss confront you and say, why are you not being responsive to so-and-so? They need this from you. You're her engineer. And you can say, when I get treated respectfully, I will certainly respond. Or I have given her the necessary information that she needed. Give only the business part, not hello, how are you? Here's your stuff. Just send the business part. Because they want attention, emotional reaction, they'll get angry if they don't see some behind kissing, some butt kissing on some fear. You know, they want to see this anxiety. Also, I think the best way to communicate with toxic people is not using their ears. I think they hear better with their eyes. What I mean by that is you can send an email and focus on editing it down to bullet points and then copy that person's boss on that email as well. So now there's a third looming party overreaching.
On editing
All
it down
written.
to bullet
Now
points
you can
and
prove your
copy
facts.
that
Now
person's
you
boss.
have all of the information that you can see that it's provable. And so also if you use their ears, they're going to argue with you. They don't listen. They're already waiting to argue. If you give them an email and you make them hear with their eyes, then they're forced without you in their space while they're monitoring your body language or your nervousness, and they're catching on to all of that. And you make those emails black and white. Don't over-explain. What's your bottom line? Give them the bottom line only.
Mm-hmm. And that really puts a perspective on it too. I mean, now obviously there are different levels of all forms of toxic people. They can, not everybody is completely probably to maybe the extreme we're giving as an example, but there are toxic actions that I think people can do inadvertently just because of their own personal their personality, and they do it in personal life as well as business, but that can affect the whole team. So like these insights and the way of dealing with them, I think are so important to be able to help people.
The more emotional, toxic people are extremely emotional for the majority of them. I mean, we have our psychopaths that show no emotion at all, but most of them are provoking emotion if they're not overly emotional themselves. And we get a little bit because of the contagion of that emotional state, or even the contagion of like we're being ostracized, which is one of their favorite things to do, and then to grab a group of other coworkers to ostracize you as well. It does cause you to become disjointed. You start to disintegrate because fear takes over. And so when we get afraid, we want closure, and that's what they want. They want us to go. And I always think that patience is a very hard mind state to wait out, because our minds tell us the worst case scenarios. We're falling off the short end of our flat world. We're going to be fired and homeless. We do that, but that's only a phase of waiting. If you can get through that phase of waiting and learn to give things some space, that short circuits toxic people pretty decently.
Oh, and not only toxic people, but that reverberates to so many other processes in life.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. Because waiting, we cannot be rational if we're not waiting. That's why I think it's better with toxic people to let them hear with their eyes, because they have to wait. They're being put in a place where they have to read that email alone, and they can't hear half a word come out of your mouth and jump down your throat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Make them wait. You get to set the pace on anything in your own life. That's your choice. Set the pace. If you need to take a night to find yourself to be rational, but I do, if you are waiting and you have a lot of anxiety, I would definitely write out what you'd like to say. Try to define what your bottom lines are, because when we get nervous, we tend to talk too much and we talk fast and we're hurrying to get it in. And I think if you can take a minute, just take a moment for yourself, I vomit it all over paper and continue to work it down into bottom line bullet points, so that when you come to, let's say you're going to be asked about this person by someone else, that you are clear. You're not overly dramatic. You're settled in your emotional state. Your body language is matching the content of how you feel. You are so much more believable when you're able to speak in a way where you're in the truth of what you know the truth to be. So it's getting rid of the riffraff that all the fear creates, that there's going to be all this loss and doom.
I learned something the other day that, well, I try to live by it, but even if you're that person who's the toxic person and you've just been educated on your ways, let's just say that, I think that we have to also allow people to set with these things that they hear, because we've had a lot of time to deal with the information that we are presenting to someone. We need to remember that they also need time to process that, and that their response to us doesn't need to be immediate. We want it to be, because we've had all this time to think about it, but I just always challenge people to think about that action in anything, not just this situation.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm a huge fan. I don't know if you ever heard of the I Ching, but it's the book of changes. And I really like science. And so it's about elements. And instead of giving you like sort of a view on life that there is always resolve, there's always a utopia or a happy ending. The bottom line in life, and what I think maybe why I was drawn to the I Ching, is because there isn't always that. Bad things can happen to really good people. And this book, the way that it's used, and if you're not familiar with it, I would research it. I think there's a lot of ways to be good in business. And I will tell you that one of the most effective ways to be good in business or life is to learn to wait. Pride impedes progress always. Pride always impedes progress. And so if someone's very prideful, they're going to provoke your own pride. Because we don't want to be disrespected. We don't want to feel like we're just being walked on. But what I've learned in my own sort of spiritual journey throughout life, consulting texts like the I Ching and other things, is there is a way, and there's a peaceful warrior way. There's also a technique called gray rocking to cope with a conversation that's social with a toxic coworker where you don't want to reveal anything and they're pretty sneaky at getting secrets and gossip and inside scoop. You just gray rock. You become the most boring rock in the pile.
No shiny rocks.
It's like a non-responsive gray rocking, just like, and they love to talk about themselves. And there's so many like blind spots that they have, so they don't realize people are going to tire of their BS, and people tire of their BS. Right. And so if you can gray rock them and continue to deflect the conversation back to them, knowing you're doing it and watching them fall into that trap, you're just like, this is great. You know what I mean? And they think that you like them and they think you're falling for it. It's great. There's so many ways, but all the ways that I teach have to do with patience
and humility
and recognizing that bad things happen to good people. And how can you handle yourself in those moments? Can you still stay true to your integrity? Yes. Are you going to cry? Are you going to hurt, have anxiety, and do those things? Yeah, but it's not about being inhuman, but it's about calling on something other than fear, or trusting some aspects of the unknown, that you don't have to do all the work. I mean, maybe you could just wait a minute, see what happens.
Dr. Sherrie, what do you tell people that are in a bad situation? Do you advise people to go to HR, or do you think that silence and gray rocking is a better alternative?
I think that all of them are great alternatives. I think they're all a step up the ladder. I believe that HR with a boss never works, but I do and have seen HR work, putting people on like a PIP and then they have to go through a coaching type of regimen, and you have to show measurable improvement. And because toxic people value money over anything else, I mean, why would they do that? Love the God of green paper. Well, because it allows them to play God. Think about that. So if they get put on a PIP and they think it's going to make them lose their money, they'll feign, or maybe even, depending how toxic the person is, actually learn something. But no matter what, they're going to learn the behaviors that will keep them attached to the God of green paper. And if that means they have to be nice to someone else or get fired, who cares if it's fake or not? Just go with it.
Wow. Yeah. And and I like to always hope that there are people that can actually get past or recognize their toxic behaviors. But just like we know, I mean, I'm sure that you've heard family, our work life mirrors our family, and
Correct.
it's just a different set of situations. So, but I like to believe that everybody can truly overcome these, and that getting uncomfortable and digging deep into those awkward conversations and digging into the problems is the only way to fix it.
Yeah, you got to fix you. They don't have any insight. They are above reproach. They do not change. Also, they know what they're doing and it works for them. So when you are built without the most important quality of a human being empathy really can't be learned from a book. You either have that or not. I would also believe the same thing about survival. You either really have that survival gene, or I think that you don't. There's people that have had very little trauma that can hardly survive. There's people that have had unbelievable amounts of trauma and they're incredible survivors. I think some of this is inbuilt. If someone doesn't have empathy, you cannot feed it to them. You cannot teach that. And they are above reproach. So whenever you're looking at change, you need to be the one that does the deeper dive. Why does this person upset you so? What can you learn? What lesson can you learn? We get so wanting to believe that there's good in all people. Maybe there's a mustard seed of good in all people somewhere, but we have so much evidence as we look out to this world that clearly they're not in touch with it and they don't want to be. So that's been because I really work in the family area. We like to believe that family cannot be abusers. Well, people can abuse and people in groups can abuse. So when we attach the word family to a group of people, all of a sudden they can't abuse? I'm confused about this. Okay, that makes no sense to me. But we have a history of seeing genocide in other countries, one group of person against another, and the Holocaust or other horrible things. So people can be abusers and groups of people can abuse under a platform, but not family. What?
Yeah, because they're supposed to be the caring, loving entity no matter what. And
that's right. That just makes no sense if you have to break it down to logic, right? I like science. I like, although I can't do math to save my life, I create math. It's cute, but I do like logic and the way that logic works and breaking something down into its parts. Because for me, when I think of wholeness, I don't really think of a perpetual state of well-being. I think positive psychology is extremely dangerous. What I think it implies all of the proper parts, all of the dualities that life brings us. Well, what do you do in life? I think be like water. Eventually, water erodes rock. I'm not saying take it. I'm saying control you. You can't control toxic people. No boundaries will work. They look at that as, yeah, I have insight into this person and their patterns and where to hurt them.
Wow. And I think we are sitting over here quiet because I'm just like, there is no greater truth to me that has been spoken, right? I mean, this is how we should deal with life day in and day out. And so many of us expect for work to be perfect because that's what I think the goal is, for all of us, subliminally. And we should expect failure and turmoil and everything, and learn to deal with that and prepare for it.
You know, perhaps because hope wasn't a part of my childhood, that to survive.
What's my favorite saying that you
Hope
say?
is dope.
Dope.
Perhaps to survive, my only choice was to find the truth in the dark. And it led me into different readings. I had paper parents. If I needed advice or help, I couldn't go anywhere but to a book. I would say Little House on the Prairie probably saved my life. Aspects of the movie Annie, the stuffed animals I had in my room. And so I do find in many, many interviews that people get very quiet on the other side of me sharing something. At first, it used to make me feel a little bit like, did I say something wrong? But I recognize that I'm saying things that I think make sense to the core of any human being. And that may be why it's impactful, is because I've never been able to walk on the side of hope and have that be real.
Hope is not a strategy.
No, and children it's the most magical, innocent, beautiful, sparkly emotion kids can have. And my hope was used with intermittent kindness, and toxic people, colleagues, parents do this. Abuse doesn't work without doses of hope. You need the hope to become addicted to thinking you will get another dose, which creates anxiety, addiction, and a loss of hope. And with children, and if you think about a coworker, on the other side of hope, the duality to hope, at least this is my opinion, is hate. If you frustrate the hope in another human being, it will lead you to hate them. Hate meaning is a very short-lived, powerless emotion, but at the moment of hate, you feel some level of justice. You feel enough is enough. And they know this, and hate can lead to resolve, which is recovery, and they will make sure they suck you back in. And so when you go back to hope, you go back with a lack of self-respect. You've now lost your justice. You're even more shamed, and you think maybe you did do something wrong. But when a toxic person can get you to hate, they feel so excited. They brought you to be ugly. And now you get to be blamed as the abuser. And then they drop down to showing you kindness once again. So in that process that they all run, that is why confusion is such a part of their dynamic, because it breaks down your resiliency and only affects your self-perception.
Do they know they're doing this? Are they aware that they're doing it? It becomes a pattern for them, and it's like a thing that they do?
Yes. I'm not sick enough to say that this is exactly how they are, because I feel like you have to be sick enough to actually get into that mindset. I think they live not from love or connection, but from competition and excitement, the need for a high or an audience, or how powerful they can be. How many people can they get to gang up on you, or lie about you, where you start reacting and wanting to jump in front of that truth, or the smear campaign. And you do feel, because you feel the feeling of hate, which our society says is wrong, now you have maladaptive guilt when you were provoked to be there. But because you felt the emotion, you feel bad.
And we could go so deep on that too. We could talk for hours. But you know, the one thing too that I always think of out of the compassion is that these folks have learned how to operate and get what they want in this negative space. And I wonder how many of them don't even realize that their communication style and their manipulation, this is what they've done their whole life, perhaps. This is how they learn to get what they want. And I mean, it's not up to us to be the one to save them, but I think you've given us some great tools to learn how to save ourselves from those people.
Well, and if you think about it, and this is just my way, because I've had to see, I lived in the upside down world, like Stranger Things. I've lived in the upside down, so I see everything a bit backwards. I believe that the most loving thing I can do to someone who's abusing me is to cut them off. I believe that in doing that, I'm giving them an opportunity to have them lose a relationship that they claim to care about, and that they would have to deal with those consequences. Now, whether they take that opportunity or not is actually not up to me, but it doesn't mean that I don't give it. I believe in the laws of cause and effect, and I believe that those are scientific. I believe they're at the core of how things work on patterns of behavior, the science of that. I also believe that the most loving thing I can do in the highest form of love is to respect that they want to be toxic. This works for them. My tugging on them to be different is a lack of respect for their own choices and boundaries around the desire to be toxic. I certainly don't like when they want me to be a jerk and a codependent, needy, complacent, pleasing person. I don't like that. That's very violating to me. And I would like them to respect that I don't like that. And if that would mean they wouldn't want a relationship with me, then that would be understandable.
Mm-hmm. Just seems so simple when you put it that way, doesn't it?
It actually really is. It's where the pain is in the attachment.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the attachment space of wanting love, wanting acceptance, wanting resolve, wanting just a genuine, like, high level, hey, we've got some conflict here. Let's find a way to resolve this in a way where no one's dehumanized. And we want to believe that capacity is in every person. It doesn't matter to me if you were raised to be toxic. One thing I do know that all of us are built with is to know right from wrong. We know it. One of the best books I read is called Manipulated by H.G. Tudor. And he is a narcissist writing about being one. And he tells us, you are foolish if you think that my kind, that we don't know exactly what we're doing. We know exactly what we're doing. And we practice this skill every single day. They don't want love or attachment. They want fuel. They want power. They want to win. So they are 100% conscious of what they are doing. And that is the hardest thing for people to swallow. Denial just kicks in because it's scary to really understand that they know and they enjoy it.
Wow.
That's very scary. Dr. Sherrie, we could talk about this all day long, but we have to end our live stream today. It was so wonderful talking to you again, as it always is. We talked a lot about silence as a tool, gray rocking, and just humility.
And the detachment can be our resolution.
100%. It makes them powerless.
Yeah.
Love it.
Really good.
They're going to go be powerful in their way to someone else. It's not about disempowering them. It's disempowering them to you. That's it. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for, like, you've given our listeners so much valuable and us. So I'm so appreciative.
Thank you so much, guys.
Dr. Sherrie, anytime, please come back. And
love you, Dr. Sherrie.
Let me know. These are so fun. They make me happy.
Love you, girl.
Awesome. Thank you
Love
so
you.
much, Dr. Sherrie.
Bye, guys. Send me the link.
Bye.
My page will love this, so I'll make sure to post it.